Welcome to another exciting edition of In a Word. This is a mystery edition today. I'm Jim Ott.
And I'm Kathy Cordova.
And today on our show we've got guests here. We're talking about The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, that great classic. It's part of the Pleasanton, the big read here in Pleasanton. We've got all kinds of activities around the community during the month of October, and we're going to celebrate that as well and talk about this book. So Kathy, you want to introduce our guests?
Sure, and we're kicking this big read program off with some awesome guests. We've got two mystery authors here. First we have Hailey Lind. Hailey, you are the author of several mystery books. Your latest one is Brush with Death. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we have Mark Coggins. Mark is another mystery author from San Francisco.
Right.
I've heard that your protagonist has some similarities to Sam Spade.
Yes, he does. He does.
So we'll be interested in talking to you about that. And your latest book is Candy from Strangers. So thanks for joining us, Mark.
Thank you for having us.
Great. Well, I just want to start out by asking, for a lot of people who are only familiar with the Maltese Falcon from the movie of Humphrey Bogart, why is this considered such a classic detective story?
Do you want me to take that one?
Sure.
Well, I'll let Mark give the actual expert version, but my version, just mostly as a reader and someone who's really enjoyed Maltese Falcon, is I think that it really set the stage for sort of the modern detective novel. We had the Agatha Christie's and Sherlock Holmes before that, and those set certain models, but I think, to me, the Maltese Falcon really gave us that hard-boiled, kind of uniquely American character that was delved into in the book much more than in the movie, as is typical. And I think in the book you have more of a sense of what his internal thoughts are, even though the book is not written from his perspective. A movie can only show you, the external actions. And in the book, I think you get a better sense of him as a rounded person, but a person who lives by a certain moral code that is very tough and very independent, and all of those good things that we think of as sort of uniquely American.
Now, you mentioned something, this is considered a hard-boiled genre. What is that, Mark?
Well, hardboiled writing is typically associated with Hammett, and actually the writers that came out of a magazine that was published in the 20s and 30s called The Black Mask. And Hammett got his start writing stories for The Black Mask. In fact, the Maltese Falcon was serialized in 4 editions of The Black Mask before it was published as a book. Hammett started there, Chandler started there as well, and the writers in that magazine, the writers for that magazine, were writing very quick, fast-paced stories that had this sort of quality of a lot of action and toughness. And as I think Hailey correctly says, Sam Spade is sort of the archetype for the American private eye. You didn't really have that character before that book came out. There were other private eyes in these pulp fiction magazines, but they were very quick with the guns, sort of do-gooders all the time. There wasn't this sort of tough, cynical person like Sam Spade projected in the
moral ambiguity of him.
Exactly right.
It's funny because I had not read the book before, and until we read it for the big read for this program, and reading it now in 2007. And it was written in 1930, I realized that all these stereotypes that I've seen in movies and books all came from, they all originated with the Maltese Falcon. The tough guy, the femme fatale,
There's kind of a John Wayne, I see it spilling over into the Westerns too with John Wayne. It seems like he's that same kind of character, just kind of tough guy that, yeah, he's interested in women when it's appropriate for him, but otherwise he's got other things to do,
Well, that's right. I think people say that the private eye is the cowboy in the city, basically.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Now, what about him, reading him as a woman in 2007 was a little strange, I think. Now, I know when it first came out that even Dorothy Parker in The New Yorker said, oh, she was very attracted to him. She thought he was very sexy. What was your reaction reading?
It's interesting because I knew I was coming on this interview, I reread The Maltese Falcon, which I had read years ago, and I've seen the movie, of course, several times. And, I think to some extent you always have to take into account when it was made and what they were writing, but it was also written by a man, and I think primarily for male readers at a time, and some people say even about some of the big action or thriller writers now that they really are writing mostly for men too. And if you see those books, the women characters really are sort of throwaways.
Kind of reminded me of James Bond a little bit.
There you go.
You know,
they're always
cad.
beautiful, and they're
It's like he drinks a lot, he smokes, you know, he cusses, he has his way with the women, and then, you know, tosses them aside. How did you? I know they've said that your character is modeled after Sam Spade. Tell me how you approach this in modern day political correctness. How did you?
Well, my character is not nearly as successful with women as Sam Spade was. But I read some people believe that Sam Spade was actually also having an affair with Effie, which I didn't, who was his secretary, which I didn't necessarily think was true. But if you believe that, then he did have affairs with 3 women in the book. But Hammett has made a point of writing about these kinds of characters, the Bridget O'Shaughnessy type characters, who are temptresses and can get their way by using men in the way that Bridget does. And so that was a theme he'd been developing in other stories, and really the Maltese Falcon is kind of the pinnacle of his exploration of that theme, I think, with Bridget. The other thing that's interesting that some readers believe is that Spade knew from the beginning of the book that O'Shaughnessy had killed his partner, and was only just leading her along all that time to find out what was really behind all of the, you know, the twists and intrigue. So I also found that was kind of, I'm not sure I believe that, but it's sort of interesting. He's not so much having affairs with women for the sake of women. I think in the same sense that O'Shaughnessy...
There's a purpose behind it.
Yeah, no, there is, to some extent, yeah. I think he is using her in the same sense that she tries to use him, so to some extent
And I
anyway.
think to some extent, too, that one thing you can say about Bridget, probably the main female character that's explored in the book, the femme fatale, is that she is intelligent. She's very clever, and she's smart, and she's powerful in her way. And she uses sex for power, but you know, in that sense, I mean, you can sort of rewrite the character a little bit and see it from a sense in the 30s when, you know, maybe women weren't really at their strongest. And this was a bit shocking, I think, at the time. And she sleeps with him, you know, also. It's
her
a
choice,
mutual thing.
right.
Exactly.
So maybe it's a feminist book.
So, well, I'm just saying that I think, I'm not sure I would go that far, but I think you can see it from lots of different angles. They weren't just throwaway cardboard characters, you know, in that sense. And Effie, I think, is a really intriguing character herself, the secretary, and she's someone with this whole life that I was always kind of curious about, you know. But I think she's round in that way of a character, that she has a lot to say.
And she, you know, it's interesting you mentioned that there could be the possibility of an affair there. I didn't see that at all. And if anything, I saw...
What about when she rubbed his neck and he
there's
brushed up
definitely
against her
some
breast?
affinity between the two of them. But there's kind of a sexual tension that we see in so many sitcoms and dramas today that go on and on and on until finally the end of a television series, when finally they get married. Or,
That's right.
You know, but it seems to me that that's what's going on there.
No, I think you're probably right, but it is interesting that some people read it that way. Both of those characters, by the way, were based on real people. Bridget O'Shaughnessy was based on a woman that he worked with, Hammett worked with, when he was writing advertising copy for Samuel's Jewelers, which was a jewelry store in San Francisco. And Effie was actually, I believe, based on his cousin, who was also named Effie. So most of the characters you can find some derivation, including Spade and Hammett's prior life.
And this book was based in San Francisco, and I know you said that people have traced some of the history of the book. Tell us a little bit about that, Mike.
Yeah, well, Hammett scholars have gone back, and you may remember there's a scene where Spade is following Cairo, or he meets Cairo right before he goes into a play. And there's it's actually the current ACT Theater in San Francisco, which is called the Geary Theater in the book. And in 1928, in December, in the first 2 weeks of December, there was the same play that's mentioned playing in the book in real life. So the book is really intended to be sort of a very grounded piece of fiction that's really based on real things in San Francisco. And you can go around and find, you know, various locales that are still in San Francisco, including the apartment. I've had the opportunity, it's on the corner of Post and Hyde. Hammett lived there while he wrote the Maltese Falcon, and he based Spade there as well. There's a gentleman who's a big Hammett aficionado who lives there. His name is Bill Arney, and he let me visit the apartment, and it's actually been dedicated as a literary landmark. And it's very fun to go and sort of read the book and see all the little scenes, including, if you remember, where Spade makes O'Shaughnessy strip to see if she's secreted this $1,000 bill on her person, and you can go into the bathroom and actually see the tub that she sat on, or he sat on while he watched her strip. So
How
it is kind of fun. Yeah.
Mark has pictures of that on his website.
Yeah, I do on my website.
Not her taking her clothes off.
No.
Not that kind of a show.
But of the apartment, it's fun
That's
to go
right.
and see it now, you know, contemporary pictures.
That's right. When it was dedicated, Hammett has a living daughter, Josephine Hammett, and she was there, and I got the opportunity to meet her and have my photograph taken with her
So what's your website? So we mentioned it.
Oh, well, just look for www.markcoggins.com, and then there's a section called Other Words, and if you look around in the articles there, you'll find it.